The alarm blared through the war chamber of the Valoran Dominion, a monumental structure of living crystal that pulsed with bluish tones as it captured the thoughts of the assembled strategists. High Commander Xerath observed the three-dimensional hologram floating in the center of the room, his 6 compound eyes analyzing every detail of the blue sphere suspended in the projected void. Earth, planet designated as Sector 7742 Epsilon, a world of water and stone orbiting a mediocre star in one of the galaxy's less relevant spiral arms. Xerath expanded the hologram with a gesture of his 4 hands, revealing data compiled by reconnaissance probes. The atmosphere was primitively rich in oxygen, the land masses fragmented into irregular continents. The dominant intelligent life, self-named human, had developed technological civilizations a mere 12,000 cycles ago. For an empire that counted its history in millions of years, this was less than a cosmic breath. Members of the Strategic Council, Xerath began, his voice resonating through neural translators that converted his ultrasonic clicks into frequencies understandable by the diverse species present. I present the case for Operation Blue Submission. This world represents the Dominion's 1047th conquest. Subcommander Thex, a reptilian creature from Sigma, Draconis, tilted his cranial crest in interest. Detail the natives' military capabilities, Commander. Xerath activated a sequence of images. Ground vehicles powered by internal combustion, aircraft that barely broke the sound barrier. Weapons that relied on chemical explosions to project pieces of metal. The Council emitted sounds that the translators interpreted as scornful laughter. They reached their own moon approximately 60 cycles ago using chemical propulsion rockets. Xerath continued, zooming in on images of rusty lunar modules abandoned on the grey surface. Since then, they have limited themselves to orbiting their own planet in space stations that can barely sustain a dozen individuals. They possess no deflector shields, warp drive, or any gravitational manipulation technology. Military Advisor Vix, a gaseous entity contained within a crystal exoskeleton, pulsed in questioning colors. What about social unity? Fragmented civilizations can surprise when threatened. It was then that Xerath displayed his most compelling evidence. The hologram showed a map of Earth divided into hundreds of regions demarcated by artificial lines. Red and blue flashed in areas of active conflict. Data scrolled alongside, revealing statistics of internal wars, territorial disputes, religious and ideological conflicts. This is the true reason why Earth represents a trivial conquest, Xerath declared with audible satisfaction. Humans are a species divided to the core. 320 separate nations, each with its own systems of government, beliefs, and objectives. They spend 20% of their total planetary resources on fighting among themselves. He paused to let the information sink in. A race that wastes energy, fighting over pieces of land and philosophical differences, is fundamentally incapable of mounting unified resistance against an external threat. Dominion history proves this repeatedly. Divided worlds fall in weeks, not years. The Council murmured in agreement. Xerath magnified the tactical projection. My proposal: a fleet of 500 destroyer-class ships positioned in high orbit. Demonstration of force through electromagnetic pulses that will disable their primitive communication networks. Demand for unconditional surrender within 72 hours. When they inevitably refuse out of tribal pride, We will execute surgical bombardments on 10 major population centers. Capitulation will follow within an additional 48 hours. Expected resistance? Minimal. Their most advanced ballistic missiles barely reach low orbit and can be intercepted by our automated defense systems. Their attempts at cyber warfare will be pathetic against our quantum network architecture. Estimated Dominion casualties, 0. The silence that followed was one of absolute confidence. 10,000 years of uninterrupted conquests, 46 subjugated civilizations. The Valoran Dominion was the most efficient military force in the known galaxy, an expansion machine operating with mathematical precision. That was when the shadows at the back of the chamber stirred. Elder Archivist Moros emerged from the gloom where he had been silently observing. His form was difficult to distinguish, obscured by layers of data robes that projected historical information in constant streams. No one knew exactly how long Moros had served the Dominion. Some said he was present at the Empire's founding, 10 millennia ago. Others whispered he was far older. Commander Zerath. Moros's voice was like ancient stones grinding together, processed by antiquated translators that created disturbing harmonic echoes. I request permission to present counter-evidence. The council stirred, surprised. Moros rarely participated in strategic debates, preferring to catalogue the past rather than shape the future. Archivist, with all due respect, your historical records are valuable, but they do not alter contemporary tactical analyses, Zerath replied with forced patience. Then allow me to refresh collective memories. Moros gestured, and the Earth hologram was replaced by ancient symbols, dating from long before the Valoran Dominion existed. Krevthon Empire, civilization that dominated this galaxy 140,000 cycles ago, technology superior to our current one, war fleet with 3,000 decimator-class ships. Another symbol appeared. Joule Confederation, 80,000 cycles ago, masters of temporal manipulation, capacity to reverse battles before they occurred. A third. Vrax Hegemony, 52,000 cycles. Experts in biological warfare, capable of turning planetary atmospheres into weapons. Zerath interrupted, annoyed. Archivist, everyone knows these civilizations were destroyed by natural catastrophes or internal wars. What is the relevance? Moros remained still. The relevance, Commander, is that all these empires attempted to conquer the same blue planet you now designate as a trivial target, and all of them completely disappeared after first contact. The silence in the chamber became dense, almost physical. Impossible. Vix pulsed. Are you suggesting that primitives with chemical rockets defeated civilizations that manipulated time? I do not suggest. I state, based on archaeological records, fragments of Krevthon ships were found in the solar system's asteroid belt. Joule escape pods, orbiting the gas giant they call Jupiter. Vrax biological warfare spores fossilized in lunar craters, all dated to periods corresponding to the falls of those civilizations. Moros magnified the Earth hologram again, but now with layers of historical data superimposed. Humans evolved on a world that tried to exterminate them repeatedly. Ice ages that froze entire continents. Predators evolved specifically to hunt them. Diseases that killed thirds of their populations. Volcanoes that darkened skies for generations. And yet they survived. Thex completed, beginning to understand. Not just survived, they thrived. Their greatest strength is not technology or physical force. It is a pathological refusal to accept extinction. They call it stubbornness. We should call it existential danger. Zerath slammed one of his hands on the command table. Archivist, with all respect to your age, you are allowing ancient myths to cloud tactical judgment. These civilizations fell due to internal weaknesses, not because of... Then explain why all three civilizations, separated by tens of thousands of cycles, chose the same target for conquest, and why all of them disappeared within 5 years after first contact. Moros projected one last image, a fragmented transmission, recovered from a Joule escape pod. Drifting in the interstellar void, the flickering form of an alien officer appeared, his temporal armor cracked, his multifaceted eyes dilated in pure terror. The message was short, distorted by time and damage. But 3 words were clearly translated: "Do not wake humans." The council remained silent for long moments. Then, Zerath deactivated the hologram with an abrupt gesture. Archivist, I appreciate the historical presentation. However, the Valoran Dominion is not governed by superstition. We are the most advanced civilization in the current galaxy. Our technology has surpassed all predecessors mentioned. And more importantly, we have something they did not. 10,000 years of experience conquering worlds exactly like this one. He looked around the chamber, seeking confirmation. The council members nodded slowly, the comforting logic of technological superiority dissipating the echoes of ancient warnings. Vote, Zerath declared. All in favor of Operation Blue Submission? Confirmation lights flashed in sequence around the chamber. Unanimous approval. Moros said nothing more. He simply retreated into the shadows, his data robes pulsing with information no one else cared to read. While the council discussed invasion logistics, the elder archivist updated his records. Civilization number 4, attempting to conquer Earth, Valoran Dominion. Date of first contact, 17 days. Dominion survival probability. He left the field blank. As the war chamber emptied, no one noticed Moros activating a special archive protocol, a protocol he had created long ago after studying the patterns. The protocol initiated a countdown. Estimated time until empires fall, 2 years. He had seen this happen 3 times before, and he knew with absolute certainty that he would see it again. The fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 500 Valoran Dominion ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their angular silhouettes blocking the stars as they assumed strategic orbital positions around Earth. Each destroyer was 3 kilometers long, clad in quantum titanium alloy that absorbed radar radiation and deflected conventional lasers. Their shield generators created invisible force fields, capable of withstanding the impact of thermonuclear warheads. From the Arch command post of the flagship Executor of Will, Zerath watched the blue planet rotate slowly below. Even through holographic filters, Earth was undeniably beautiful. Vast oceans reflecting sunlight, green and brown continents interwoven with river systems like blue veins. White clouds swirling in chaotic but hypnotic patterns. In a few weeks, all of it would belong to the Dominion. Status of planetary defenses, Zerath ordered. Sensor Officer Kyvex manipulated bioluminescent controls. We detect mass activation of terrestrial alert systems, 320 independent nation-states mobilizing military forces. Communication patterns increased by 400%. No attempt at attack so far. Because they know it would be useless, Thex commented beside Xerath, probably arguing among themselves which faction should negotiate with us first. Xerath activated the broadband transmitter, configured to hit all radio and television frequencies on the planet simultaneously. The message would be automatically translated into all human languages through AI processing. Inhabitants of planet Earth, this is the conquest fleet of the Valoran Dominion, representing the supreme authority of 46 civilized worlds. You have been selected for integration into the Galactic Empire. Resistance is illogical and will result in unnecessary suffering. He paused, allowing the translation to reach every corner of the planet. He imagined the chaos below, panic in the streets, government leaders holding emergency meetings, scientists frantically checking if this was real. Your options are simple. Unconditional surrender within 72 hours. All weapon systems must be deactivated. All military installations evacuated. Representatives from each nation must transmit formal acceptance of integration into the Dominion. In exchange, your lives will be preserved, and you will receive the benefits of superior technology. Xerath looked at the holographic timer. Otherwise, we will demonstrate military capability through selective bombardment of 10 population centers. The choice is yours. You have 72 hours. Executor of will-ending transmission. The silence that followed in the command post was one of professional satisfaction. Another conquest executed according to protocol established over millennia. Now we wait, Thex said. It usually takes between 12 and 20 hours for planetary leaders to overcome denial and initiate negotiations. It took 17 hours. The transmission came from multiple simultaneous sources, a coordinated signal from various terrestrial nations. The face that appeared on the main screen was that of a middle-aged man, graying hair, a controlled, calm expression. He wore a dark suit and sat behind a simple wooden desk. Behind him, flags of different countries formed a semicircle. Representatives of the Valoran Dominion. The human began in English, which the translators instantly converted. My name is Marcus Delacroix, Secretary General of the United Nations. I have been authorized by 183 terrestrial nations to respond to your transmission. Xerath leaned forward, interested. 183 out of 320 nations agreeing on something was impressive by human standards. Perhaps they were more rational than expected. We have received your demand for surrender, Delacroix continued, and we would like to propose face-to-face negotiations. We believe there is room for dialogue that benefits both parties without the need for violence. Thex spat, the sound translated as scornful laughter. They always try to negotiate, as if they had anything we value besides submission. But Xerath considered. Face-to-face negotiations would speed up the process. A demonstration of ground force combined with the Dominion's impressive physical presence would break any remaining psychological resistance. I accept your proposal, Secretary General Delacroix. Specify coordinates for the meeting. There was a slight pause in the transmission. Then Delacroix provided coordinates that the navigation systems identified as a desert region on the continent they called Africa, specifically in the country named Libya. Remote area, minimal population, flat terrain, ideal for ship landing. Those coordinates are acceptable, Xerath confirmed. Prepare to receive a Dominion delegation in 24 hours. Executor of will-ending transmission. When the connection was cut, Thex expressed concern. "Commander, this could be a trap. Humans are known for treachery, even among themselves." Xerath gestured dismissively. What trap could they prepare? They possess no weapons capable of penetrating our individual energy shields. Our delegation will consist of 50,000 elite soldiers, each equipped with enough weaponry to level a terrestrial city. Even if all the humans on the planet attacked simultaneously with primitive technology, they could not cause a single casualty. He activated tactical projections. Furthermore, this gives us the perfect opportunity. A massive demonstration of terrestrial military power. When they see 50,000 Dominion warriors marching in perfect formation, they will understand the futility of resistance. Preparations began immediately. Xerath personally selected the troops. Krevnak soldiers from Sigma Orionis, each 8 feet tall with physical strength equivalent to 10 humans. Sylph snipers from Proxima, capable of hitting targets 3 miles away with plasma rifles. Gormath heavy combat specialists from Betelgeuse, wearing mechanized armor that turned each soldier into a walking tank. The transport ships descended through the Earth's atmosphere in a V formation, their entries generating re-entry flares that tore through the night sky like controlled meteors. Shield systems deflected the extreme heat, allowing for a smooth and intimidating descent. Xerath was in the first ship, watching through visors as they approached the designated coordinates. The desert below was exactly as orbital scans showed. Golden sand stretching to the horizon. Some sparse rock formations, no significant vegetation, no visible artificial structures. Sensors detect no significant human presence, the pilot reported. Just sand and rock. Perhaps they are late, Thex suggested. Primitives usually have difficulty with punctuality. The ships landed, creating shallow craters in the sand with the impact of their anti-gravity systems. Ramps lowered, and 50,000 Dominion soldiers marched out in precise formation. The ground trembled under thousands of armored boots and paws. Xerath descended last, accompanied by his personal guard. The desert air was hot and dry, laden with fine sand particles that his respiratory filters automatically removed. The terrestrial sun shone intensely above, smaller than that of many Dominion worlds, but still uncomfortably direct. "Establish defensive perimeter," Xerath ordered. "Await the arrival of the human delegation." The soldiers obeyed with perfect military efficiency. Motion sensors were positioned, energy weapons calibrated, individual force shields activated, creating translucent bubbles of protection around each warrior. Minutes passed, then hours. The desert remained empty and silent. "Where are they?" Thex murmured, his compound eyes scanning the empty horizon. "Is this deliberate insult or incompetence?" Xerath was about to order a return to the ships when the motion sensors began to flash. But they were not detecting the approach of human vehicles or troops. They were detecting something buried in the sand, 50 meters below them. The sheep realization hit Xerath like an electrical discharge. He spun to shout an evacuation order, but his voice was swallowed by the roar that emerged from the ground itself. The nuclear warheads detonated simultaneously. 23 high-yield thermonuclear devices, each with an explosive force equivalent to 50 megatons, strategically positioned beneath the landing area. The humans had not just mined the meeting site. They had turned square miles of desert into a single death trap. The first fraction of a second of detonation instantly vaporized the sand, turning silicon into superheated plasma. The shockwave traveled faster than sound, hitting the transport ships before alert systems could even register danger. The soldiers' individual shields were designed to deflect energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, not to withstand the equivalent of multiple suns being born directly under their feet. The protection bubbles collapsed in milliseconds. Mechanized armor melted like wax. 50,000 elite warriors, veterans of dozens of conquest campaigns, simply ceased to exist. The nuclear fireball expanded upward, reaching 20 kilometers in height, visible from orbit. The mushroom cloud that formed afterward was so massive that meteorological systems around the planet registered the atmospheric disturbance. From the executor of will, the crew watched in silent horror. "Report," Xerath finally managed to order, his voice coming out mechanically through paralyzing shock. "Ground force lost with all personnel," Kyvex reported, her tentacles trembling. "No vital signs detected. The transport ships were vaporized. Residual radiation is creating interference in orbital sensors." Thex looked at Xerath, his normally confident eyes now dilated in something close to fear. They destroyed their own ground, sacrificed square miles of territory just to kill us, Xerath completed. The realization was bitter as poison. They never intended to negotiate. This was calculated execution. A communications officer interrupted. "Commander, receiving transmission from the surface, origin, multiple terrestrial capitals." "Display it." Marcus Delacroix's face appeared on the screen again, but now his expression was different. There was no more courteous diplomacy, only cold, absolute determination. "Valoran Dominion," he said, and his voice carried a weight that was not present in the previous transmission. "You came to our world demanding surrender. We have responded." Behind him, the flags still formed a semicircle, but now Xerath noticed details he had ignored before. The symbols on the flags, the colors. They were not just decoration. They were declarations of war from hundreds of nations that had never agreed on anything before this moment. "Consider this our counteroffer," Delacroix continued. "You have 72 hours to abandon Earth orbit and never return. Otherwise, you will discover that we can do much worse than burn our own deserts." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Xerath looked at the hologram of Earth rotating serenely below, a primitive planet, a civilization that had barely reached its own moon, a species that had just vaporized 50,000 elite soldiers using antiquated nuclear technology and suicidal tactics. For the first time in 10,000 years of uninterrupted conquests, High Commander Xerath of the Valoran Dominion felt something he had never experienced on the battlefield: fear, and he understood, too late, that Elder Archivist Moros was right. They had awakened something that should have been left alone. Xerath did not evacuate. 50,000 dead soldiers in a single trap was not defeat. It was an insult, and insults to the Valoran Dominion demanded proportional retribution. The High Commander called an emergency meeting in the strategy hall, where holograms of the most senior officers floated around the central tactical table. "Full analysis of the attack," he ordered, keeping his voice steady. Despite the rage boiling beneath superficial control, Kyvex projected data collected by orbital sensors. The nuclear devices were of antiquated design, basic fission with secondary fusion-boosted yield. technological equivalent to weapons that civilizations abandon when they develop energy shields. However, the execution was sophisticated. The hologram showed a three-dimensional reconstruction. 23 warheads positioned in a perfect geometric pattern. Depth calculated to maximize the upward shockwave. Detonation synchronized with nanosecond precision. They studied us, Thex observed. His cranial crest contracted in a pattern that indicated reluctant acknowledgement. They knew exactly where our ships would land. Calculated troop dispersion. Waited until the entire ground force was within the lethality zone. Cunning primitives, spat a Gormith officer named Braxis. But cunning does not win wars against absolute technological superiority. I propose immediate orbital bombardment. 10 cities as promised, then 20, then 50. We continue until they surrender or until there is nothing left to surrender. Murmurs of agreement echoed through the room. Zerath considered. The logic was sound. The Dominion maintained control through demonstrations of overwhelming force, allowing a primitive species to inflict significant casualties without retaliation. Would be a sign of weakness that could inspire rebellions on other conquered worlds. Authorized, Zerath declared, prepare orbital plasma batteries. Primary targets: New York, Tokyo, London, Beijing, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, Cairo, Moscow, Sydney, Mexico City. Execute in sequence with a 6-hour interval between each attack. Let them see the destruction coming. Let the fear spread. The first city selected was Tokyo. The Japanese metropolis had a population of 38 million, considering the entire metropolitan area. Skyscrapers of glass and steel reaching hundreds of meters. Intricate transport systems moving millions of people daily. A terrestrial technological center where some of the most advanced human innovations were developed. In 20 minutes, it would cease to exist. The executor of will adjusted orbit for ideal positioning. Plasma cannons rotated on their gimbal axes, calibrating the precise angle. The weapon was a masterpiece of engineering. Magnetic confinement, containing plasma at 10 million degrees, accelerated through electromagnetic fields to relativistic speeds. Infrastructure targets mapped, the gunner reported. Financial center, governmental district, transport hub, high-density residential zones. Fire pattern calculated to maximize destruction and minimize escape. Zerath watched impassively as Tokyo died. Orbital cameras captured everything in horrific detail: buildings collapsing, underground transport systems failing, fires spreading through residential areas. In 15 minutes, the city that had existed for centuries was a field of smoking ruins. Transmit images to terrestrial leaders, Zerath ordered. Include message: 9 remaining cities will be destroyed in the next 54 hours unless unconditional surrender is transmitted. This is the consequence of resistance. He expected the images to break any remaining will to fight. Rational civilizations understood when they were defeated. Seeing millions of lives extinguished in minutes should force capitulation. The response came in 6 hours. It was not surrender. The first thermonuclear warhead intercepted the executor of will coming from an impossible angle, launched from a submerged submarine in the Indian Ocean, using a ballistic trajectory that avoided obvious detection zones. The flagship's defense systems intercepted it easily, detonating it 10 kilometers away. The second came 2 seconds later, then the third, fourth, fifth, in an accelerating cascade. Detecting multiple ballistic missile launches from all land masses, Kyvex reported, tentacles flying over controls. Count exceeds 200 and growing. Trajectories calculated for orbital defense saturation. Xerath watched incredulously as Earth literally threw everything it had. Antiquated missiles that would normally be useless against Dominion technology, but in sufficient quantity to overwhelm automated systems. Activate total countermeasures, he ordered. Destroy everything. The Dominion fleet's defenses were designed for exactly this scenario. Point lasers tracked nuclear warheads, intercepting them at safe distances. Nuclear explosions blossomed in the void of space like deadly flowers, their electromagnetic pulses dissipating harmlessly. But while the fleet was focused on the obvious nuclear warheads, something else was happening. "Commander," Kyvek said, voice laced with something between surprise and alarm. "Detecting launches of space vehicles from multiple points. Characteristics do not match missiles. They appear to be ships." "Impossible," Thex declared. "Humans do not have a significant manned space program, a few primitive orbital stations at most." But the sensors did not lie. From hidden bases, in mountains, from underground facilities dug deep into deserts, from ocean platforms disguised as oil structures, things were rising. Calling them ships was generous. They were brutally functional constructions, hastily welded together using salvage components from satellites, captured alien technology from the debris of the vaporized transport ships, and pure human engineering born of desperation. Some were little more than capsules with chemical rocket engines attached. Others were larger, clearly built in secret bunkers over months or years, waiting for the exact moment. But they all had one thing in common: human pilots willing to turn them into weapons. The first improvised ship hit a smaller destroyer-class vessel on the periphery of the formation. It had no sophisticated weapons, just mass, speed, and a high-yield nuclear warhead in the cargo bay. The human pilot aimed directly at the Valoran ship's shield generator and accelerated beyond safety limits. Automated defense systems opened fire, piercing the improvised hull, but the momentum was already guaranteed. The collision breached the force field. The warhead detonated at the point of contact. The destroyer was not completely destroyed. Secondary shields absorbed most of the blast, but critical systems were damaged. The ship began to drift out of formation, main thrusters offline. And then the other human ships arrived. A dozen of them converged on the damaged destroyer like predators sensing blood in the water. They did not attempt sophisticated maneuvers. They just attacked from different angles, using speed and suicidal determination. "They are using swarm tactics," Braxis observed with growing horror. "Like insects, individually ineffective, but collectively lethal." Xerath watched, hypnotized, as the destroyer was torn apart by a dozen successive kamikaze attacks. When the antimatter generator was finally breached, the resulting explosion illuminated the entire region of orbital space. "Casualty report," he demanded. "1 ship completely destroyed. 4 with significant damage to critical systems. The humans they are throwing themselves at us." A transmission message arrived from the surface. Xerath displayed it, expecting to see terrestrial leaders finally ready to negotiate. Instead, he saw Marcus Delacroix again. But this time, he was not in a conference room. He was in an underground command bunker surrounded by military officers from various nations. Screens behind him showed tactical maps and target lists. "Valoran Dominion," Delacroix said, voice calm but charged with absolute resolve. "You destroyed Tokyo. 38 million people. Men, women, and children who never did anything against you. He paused. So now, I will say something that I hope is translated correctly into whatever language you speak. Screw you and your war. The transmission switched to show production sites, factories that once made automobiles now producing missile components, civilian research facilities converted into weapons development, scientists who studied medicine now working on propulsion systems. You thought we were weak because we fight among ourselves. Delacroix continued, but you don't understand what that means. We have spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. We know 100 ways to destroy cities, 1,000 ways to break wills. And now, for the first time in human history, all these nations, all these cultures, all these people who never agreed on anything. He leaned into the camera. We agree on one thing. You need to die. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Zerath looked at the tactical holograms showing Earth below. The planet did not look different from orbit. Even the cloud of ashes over where Tokyo had existed was already dispersing. But something had fundamentally changed. Thex verbalized what everyone was thinking. Commander, we need to reevaluate. This is not a standard conquest. This is total war. Zerath completed. They will not surrender. They will fight until the last human. Braxis slammed his fist on the table. Then we exterminate them to the last one. We call for reinforcements. 1,000 ships. 10,000. We turn that planet into radioactive ash. But Zerath remembered the words of Archivist Moros. 3 civilizations before them had tried to conquer Earth. All disappeared. For the first time, he began to understand why. Humans did not fight like rational species. They fought like cornered animals who chose to burn the world rather than submit. And something in the suicidal ferocity of those improvised ships hitting his fleet told Zerath that Delacroix was not bluffing. Earth was ready to turn its own civilization into a weapon. The only question was the Valoran Dominion prepared for the cost of winning? 3 months after the start of the war, the galaxy was watching. Across 46 worlds conquered by the Valoran Dominion, in hidden monitoring stations and clandestine communication networks, billions of beings watched smuggled transmissions from Earth. What had started as rumors of an unsuccessful invasion had become something much bigger. It was hope. On the planet Kiros 7, a mining colony on the periphery of Dominion territory, Vrelian workers secretly gathered after the night shift. Their insectoid bodies trembled with excitement as they shared fragmented data received through encrypted networks. The images showed human ships, ugly, asymmetrical, welded with parts that seemed to come from 100 different technologies, but functional, and more importantly, effective. They don't have warp drive technology, one of the Vrelians whispered, his compound eyes reflecting the light of the smuggled screens. They still use basic chemical propulsion, but look at how they fight. The video showed a damaged human ship, leaking oxygen and fuel, still maneuvering into an attack position against a Valoran destroyer. The ship was clearly inferior in every technical aspect. It should flee, seek safety. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the enemy. The Vrelian paused the transmission. Do you understand? They don't fight to win. They fight because they refuse to lose. Similar words were being spoken on dozens of conquered worlds. The terrestrial resistance was not just a military battle, it was a philosophical demonstration. proof that technologically inferior species could resist if they were willing to pay the price. And the price humanity was paying was catastrophic. London had been reduced to rubble. Mumbai still burned after an orbital bombardment that lasted 6 hours. Cairo existed only in memories and historical records. The count of terrestrial civilian casualties had surpassed 200 million and continued to rise. But humanity did not surrender. Instead, it adapted. The terrestrial economy had completely transformed. Factories that produced consumer electronics now assembled ship components. Vertical farms fed populations relocated to underground bunkers. Universities became military research centers where scientists worked 20-hour shifts, developing countermeasures for Valorant technology. And then came the discovery that would change everything. Dr. Sarah Chen was a theoretical physicist working at a particle accelerator in China before the invasion. Now, she coordinated an international team in a bunker. Dug 3 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, her mission: reverse engineer warp drive technology from fragments recovered from destroyed Valorant ships. "It's impossible," she repeated daily to military superiors. "We need decades of basic research, generations of experiments. We can't just..." But she kept trying, because giving up meant accepting extinction. The team worked for 86 consecutive days. They slept in 3-hour shifts. They ate military rations. They lost colleagues in orbital bombardments that hit other research centers. And on the 87th day, they achieved the impossible. The human warp drive engine was not elegant. While Valorant versions used precise gravitational manipulation to curve space-time, the human version essentially forced reality to bend through brute energetic force. It consumed 100 times more energy. It had 10 times less range. The probability of catastrophic failure was 15% per jump. But it worked. The first terrestrial ship, capable of traveling faster than light, was a converted old naval frigate. They called it Phoenix. Not for cheap symbolism, but because it had been literally rebuilt 3 times after. Orbital attacks destroyed construction facilities. Commander Elizabeth Ochoa took command. A U.S. Navy veteran with 20 years of experience in nuclear submarines, she was chosen because submariners understood combat in a hostile environment where a minimal error meant certain death. "Phoenix crew," she transmitted internally as the FTL propulsion systems charged for the first time. "You know what we are about to do. First human jump beyond the solar system, first retaliation attack in enemy territory." She paused, observing faces on the command bridge. Americans, Chinese, Russians, Nigerians, Brazilians. Nations that warred among themselves for centuries now, working as a singular unit. Many of you lost families in the destroyed cities. I lost my daughter in London. We all carry personal reasons for hatred, but today, we do not attack for revenge. We attack to send a message. The FTL engines reached maximum charge. The space around the ship began to distort, creating visual effects that defied human perception. The message is simple. You can bomb us. You can destroy our cities. But as long as one human breathes, we will bring war to you. The Phoenix jumped. The sensation was like being stretched through infinite length, while simultaneously compressed into a singular point. Crew members experienced intense nausea. Some temporarily lost consciousness, but when they re-emerged in normal space, they were 12 light-years from Earth in orbit of Proxima Centauri, and more specifically, in orbit of the Valoran supply station that coordinated logistics for the terrestrial invasion. The station had a population of 3,000, repair facilities for damaged ships, ammunition and supply warehouses, a communications center, relaying orders from Central Command. The Phoenix had no sophisticated weaponry, only 6 nuclear torpedoes repurposed from terrestrial submarines and human creativity born of desperation. Targets confirmed, the weapons officer reported. Main power generators and communication modules identified. Ochoa did not hesitate. Fire at will. The torpedoes were launched in rapid succession. The station's defenses responded, but automated systems were calibrated for Valoran-level technological threats. Primitive human missiles, using simple chemical propulsion, were too slow to trigger priority interception protocols. A fatal error. The first 2 warheads destroyed the power generators. The station's lights flickered and went out. Life support systems switched to backups. The next 3 hit storage sections, creating secondary explosions that tore through the internal structure. Ochoa reserved the 6th warhead for communications. Transmit on the Dominion's open frequency, she ordered. I want every ship, every station, every conquered world to receive this. The transmission was simple. Images of the Phoenix positioned over the burning station, and a message in all known Dominion languages. From the humanity of Earth, you destroyed our cities. We will destroy your bases. You killed our civilians. We will hunt your fleets. There will be no peace. There will be no surrender. Only war, until one of us ceases to exist. The Phoenix jumped again, before reinforcements arrived. The psychological impact was immediate and profound. On Kiros 7th, the Vrelian workers watched the transmission repeatedly. Then they began to sabotage mining equipment. Small at first, just delays. But delays meant fewer resources reaching the Valoran fleet. On Theta Orionis, slaves building components for destroyers began to introduce microscopic defects. Cracks in structural joints, calibration errors in targeting systems. Each defect was too small to be detected by standard inspection, but collectively fatal. On Sigma Aquarii, clandestine communication networks shared human technical specifications, designs of improvised ships, space guerrilla tactics, methods for converting civilian equipment into weapons. The Valoran Dominion had conquered through technological superiority and overwhelming force, but it had never faced something that Earth now represented: inspiration. Commander Zerath received increasing reports of instability in conquered worlds. Open rebellions on 6 planets, industrial sabotage on 15, resistance networks forming in virtually all territories. It's contagion, the intelligence analyst explained. The terrestrial resistance has demonstrated that victory is possible. Now all oppressed peoples believe they can fight. Then we crush the rebellions, Braxis declared. We demonstrate again why the Dominion cannot be challenged. But Thex pointed out a fundamental flaw. Our fleet is split. Half is besieging Earth. The other half is responding to insurrections in already conquered territory. Our military resources are stretched beyond safe limits. Zerath studied the holographic tactical maps. Small red icons marked locations of active resistance. There were hundreds of them now, spread across the entire breadth of the Empire. An empire built over 10,000 years was starting to crack. And at the center of it all, shining like a defiant beacon, was a small blue planet that refused to die. Zerath finally grasped the true threat. Earth didn't need to win militarily, it just needed to survive long enough for its example of resistance to set the entire galaxy ablaze. And considering humanity had developed FTL, propulsion, in less than 3 months under constant bombardment, Xerath deeply feared what they could achieve in 6 months, or a year, or 2. Archivist Moros's chronometer continued its relentless countdown, and with every passing day, the impossible became inevitable. 18 months after first contact, the war had reached a critical inflection point. Earth was unrecognizable. 30% of the human population had perished. 70 major cities were destroyed. Ecosystems were ravaged by orbital bombardment and residual radiation. But humanity hadn't just survived, it had evolved. The Liberation Fleet emerged from industrial complexes carved deep into the moon. From space, stations built into the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and from orbital docks floating in synchronized orbit above what remained of Earth. They were no longer makeshift ships welded together in desperation. They were war machines designed with knowledge gained through brutal reverse engineering and 18 months of continuous combat. The flagship was named Retribution. Commander Elizabeth Ochoa, promoted to Admiral after 18 months of successful actions against Valoran targets, watched through the main viewports as the fleet assembled. 230 ships. Some were purely human, using independently developed technology. Others were hybrids, incorporating captured Valoran systems with terrestrial ingenuity. And several were gifts from liberated worlds, contributions from species as Earth had helped rebel against the Dominion. Fleet status, Ochoa ordered. Captain Rodriguez, her second-in-command, consulted holographic panels. All ships report operational FTL systems, weapons charged, shields on standby, crews at battle stations. Ochoa allowed herself a brief moment to absorb the magnitude of what they were about to do. 18 months ago, humanity could barely reach orbit. Now they were preparing to strike at the heart of the empire that had dominated the galaxy for 10 millennia. Coordinates confirmed for Theron Prime? Confirmed, Admiral. 12 jumps. Required. Estimated time of arrival, 42 hours. The bridge door slid open, and Marcus Delacroix entered. The Secretary-General looked like he had aged decades in 18 months. His hair was completely white now. Deep lines etched a face that carried the weight of impossible decisions. But his eyes still shone with the determination that defined humanity in this war. Admiral Ochoa, he said formally, the Council of Nations has voted unanimous approval for Operation Giant's Fall. Ochoa nodded. She knew the plan intimately. She had helped develop it, but hearing the official approval made it real in a different way. We understand the odds, Delacroix continued, approaching the main viewport where Earth spun below, the scars of bombardment visible even from orbit. Military analysis gives us a 30% chance of reaching Theron Prime, 15% chance of penetrating planetary defenses, a 5% chance of decisive victory. He turned to face her. But we also understand that we have no choice. The Dominion will never cease its attacks. It will never negotiate real peace. Our only option is to win completely or die trying. Ochoa gestured to the crew around the bridge. Young people from every nation. Some were barely 20 when the war began. Now, they were hardened veterans who knew space warfare better than any human in history. My crew understands, Mr. Secretary. Everyone in this fleet understands. We fight not just for Earth, but for every species oppressed by the Dominion. If we fail, at least we will die, knowing we tried. Delacroix placed a hand on her shoulder, a simple gesture, but weighted with the burden of billions of lives, depending on improbable success. May your engines be swift and your aim be true, Admiral. He left the bridge. Ochoa watched through the viewport as his transport, decoupled from the retribution, returning to the command bunker on the surface. All ships, she transmitted on the fleet's open frequency. This is Admiral Ochoa. In 2 minutes, we will initiate the first jump sequence for Theron Prime. Ship commanders, confirm readiness. Confirmations arrived in rapid succession. 230 captains, each responsible for hundreds or thousands of lives, declaring their willingness to strike at the heart of the enemy empire. Liberation Fleet, Ochoa said, her voice steady despite the internal emotional turbulence. 18 months ago, we were a species that had barely reached our own moon. Today, we travel among the stars. 18 months ago, we fought alone. Today, we represent 40 worlds who have decided that freedom is worth more than security. She paused, allowing the words to resonate through the open comms. The Valoran Dominion believes it is invincible. It believes 10,000 years of conquest guarantees 10,000 more. We are going to prove them wrong. Not because we are stronger or more advanced, but because we refuse to accept defeat. The FTL drives began to charge, creating distorted gravitational fields that visually warped the space around the ships. All ships activate warp. Drive on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. 230 ships simultaneously vanished from Earth space, leaving only residual gravitational distortions. The first jump took them to Alpha Centauri. The second to Epsilon Eridani. With each subsequent jump, they delved deeper into Valoran territory, passing through systems where the enemy fleet patrolled but was too dispersed to intercept a coordinated attack in constant motion. At the 8th jump, they encountered the first serious resistance, a Valoran patrol fleet of 50 ships positioned in a binary system that served as a defensive outpost. They should have communicated the presence of the Earth fleet and delayed the advance while reinforcements arrived. But the Liberation Fleet no longer fought like desperate amateurs. They fought like seasoned predators. 20 ships detached from the main formation, using short FTL jumps to appear behind the Valoran formation. While the enemy spun to face in the new threat, the rest of the Earth fleet attacked from 3 simultaneous directions. The battle lasted 17 minutes. Humans lost 6 ships. The Valoran lost all 50. Do not transmit survivors, Ochoa ordered coldly. We cannot allow advance warning of our arrival. It was a brutal decision, but war had taught humanity that mercy was a luxury for peacetime. The 12th and final jump brought them to the Theron Prime system, and what they saw stole the breath even from hardened veterans. The planet was an orbital engineering masterpiece. 3 artificial rings circled it at different altitudes, each serving a specific function. The innermost ring was defense, thousands of armed platforms capable of turning orbital space into a killing field. The middle ring was logistics, space docks where hundreds of ships could be repaired simultaneously. The outer ring was habitat, residential stations housing billions of Dominion citizens. And defending all of this was the core of the Valoran fleet. 300 warships of various classes, from standard destroyers to super dreadnoughts, that were 6 miles long and carried enough armament to sterilize planets. Tactical analysis, Ochoa requested, keeping her voice calm, despite the impossible odds. Rodriguez worked in silence for a few moments. Admiral, honestly, it looks like suicide. We are numerically disadvantaged, outgunned. If we attempt a frontal assault, we will be annihilated before reaching planetary orbit. Then we won't make a frontal assault. Ochoa activated the tactical projection, showing the Theron system in 3 dimensions. The Dominion relies on technological superiority. Their defenses are designed for conventional threats, but we are not conventional. She zoomed in on the inner defense ring. These weapon platforms are automated, controlled by a central AI network, very efficient against fleets that follow standard military tactics, but vulnerable to something they never expected. Computer virus, completed the cyber warfare officer, Lieutenant Nakamura. We developed malware based on captured AI architecture. Theoretically, it could take control of the Valoran systems if we can inject it into the network. Exactly, and for that, we need a distraction. Something so shocking that it forces the Valoran to reorganize their defenses. Ochoa looked around the bridge. We will split the fleet. Group Alpha, 150 ships, will attack from multiple directions simultaneously. It will look like an all-out assault. While defenses concentrate on them, Group Omega, 80 ships including the Retribution, will use short FTL jumps to appear directly above the defense ring. Rodriguez understood immediately. High-speed infiltration. We get so close that the weapon platforms can't fire without risking friendly fire. Yes. And then, Nakamura injects the virus into the defense network. If it works, we turn the Dominion's own weapons against them. And if it doesn't work, Ochoa smiled humorlessly, then we die, gloriously attempting the impossible, as humans do best. The fleet divided as planned. Group Alpha dispersed into a wide formation and accelerated toward Theron Prime from multiple directions. Group Omega remained hidden behind a small moon, FTL drives charging silently. The Valoran fleet responded as expected, 300 warships reorganized into a spherical defensive pattern, preparing to repel the invaders. They are underestimating us, Rodriguez observed. They believe 150 primitive ships pose no real threat. A mistake we are going to exploit. Group Omega, activate warp drive. Coordinates, already programmed. Jump on my mark. Ochoa watched the digital chronometer count down. 3, 2, 1, mark. Space warped, and the Retribution, along with 79 other ships, appeared simultaneously just 200 kilometers above Theron Prime's defense ring. Alarms immediately sounded throughout the Valoran fleet. Automated weapon platforms tried to swivel to engage the new threat. But Group Omega was so close that their firing arcs would cross the Dominion's own installations. Nakamura, you have a 30-second window before they figure out a solution. Ochoa said urgently, execute now. The virus was transmitted via a directed communication pulse to the defense ring's central network hub. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then thousands of automated weapon platforms simultaneously rotated 180 degrees and opened fire on the Valoran fleet they were supposed to be defending. The ensuing chaos exceeded Ochoa's most optimistic expectations. Thousands of plasma cannons that were meant to protect Theron Prime now poured destructive energy onto the defenders. Super dreadnoughts that took decades to build were perforated by their own defenses. Explosions blossomed across the orbital ring like deadly stars being born in rapid succession. Group Alpha, engage now, Ochoa transmitted. Exploit the confusion. The 150 Earth ships that had been the bait became the offensive spear. They attacked the disorganized Valoran formation with tactics developed through 18 months of desperate combat. They did not attempt elegant duels or sophisticated maneuvers. They simply concentrated fire on isolated targets, destroying them through overwhelming volume before moving to the next. Commander Zerath watched from the bridge of the Executor of Will as the empire he had served his entire life crumbled around him. The very defenses that had guaranteed Theron Prime's safety for millennia were now massacring the Dominion fleet. Disconnect the weapon platforms from the central network, he ordered desperately. Attempting, Commander, replied the systems officer. But the disconnection protocol requires authorization from 3 separate terminals simultaneously. The virus is blocking access to all of them. Then destroy the network hub physically. It is located in the center of the defense ring, protected by 20 layers of armor. We would need hours to penetrate it. Hours they did not have. Zerath watched another dreadnought be torn apart by friendly fire, its final explosion illuminating orbital space with enough radiation to blind unprotected sensors. And through it all, the Earth ships advanced relentlessly. Thex approached, his cranial crest trembling in a pattern that indicated primal fear. Commander, we need to evacuate. The battle is lost. Zerath wanted to disagree. He wanted to find a tactical solution that would reverse the situation, but decades of military experience told him Thex was right. The Liberation Fleet had not just won. They had completely shattered Theron Prime's defenses using the Dominion's own weapons. Transmit a general order for retreat, he said finally, his voice heavy with bitter defeat. All remaining ships must evacuate the system and regroup at... An explosion cut off his sentence. A smaller class destroyer, attempting to flee, was caught by a concentrated salvo from 3 Earth ships. Its destruction created a debris field that damaged 2 nearby Allied vessels. There is no safe position for regrouping, Braxis observed grimly. Conquered worlds are in open rebellion. Supply lines are cut. If we abandon the capital, the Empire collapses completely. The truth of the statement was inescapable. The Valoran Dominion had been built on a foundation of fear and technological superiority. A demonstration of weakness in the capital itself would destroy both pillars simultaneously. Then we offer surrender, Zerath said, the words coming out like broken glass. Shocked silence filled the command bridge. In 10,000 years of history, the Valoran Dominion had never surrendered. They had always been conquerors, never the conquered. Until now. Establish a communication channel with the Earth flagship, Zerath ordered. Moments later, Admiral Elizabeth Ochoa's face appeared on the main viewport. She stood on the bridge of the Retribution, her uniform smudged with battle soot, but her posture was that of a victorious predator. Commander Zerath, she said, her voice controlled and calm. I presume this communication indicates a willingness to discuss terms. Admiral Ochoa, on behalf of the Valoran Dominion, we offer an immediate cessation of hostilities. We are prepared to negotiate an orderly withdrawal from Earth territory and... No, she interrupted. Zerath blinked in confusion. Pardon? I said no. We will not accept withdrawal. We will not negotiate territory. You do not understand the situation you are in. Ochoa gestured, and the viewport split to show multiple, simultaneous transmissions. Planets in open rebellion. Valoran fleets being attacked by combined forces of liberated species. Command stations being seized by insurgents. The empire you built is crumbling, she continued. Not because we are militarily superior, but because we demonstrated that you can be beaten. And now, 46 worlds you oppressed for millennia want vengeance. Zerath felt the full weight of failure settle in. Then what do you demand? Total extermination? No, humanity does not practice genocide, but we demand justice. The transmission changed to show Marcus Delacroix. The Secretary General was in a bunker on Earth, surrounded by representatives of all Earth nations and delegates from liberated worlds. Commander Zerath, Delacroix began formally. On behalf of Earth and the free peoples of the galaxy, I present non-negotiable terms for the surrender of the Valoran Dominion. He read from a prepared document. First, immediate dissolution of all imperial structures. Every conquered world will receive complete independence. Second, reparations for civilizations damaged during conquests. Third, war crimes, trials for military leaders responsible for atrocities. Zerath listened in growing silence. The terms were harsh, but not vindictive. Humanity could have demanded slavery or extermination. Instead, they offered a just order. Fourth, Delacroix continued, establishment of a galactic council where all species have an equal voice. Earth will not seek hegemony. We seek a community of stellar nations that coexist through law, not force. And if we refuse these terms? Zerath asked, though he already knew the answer. Ochoa replied. Then the war continues until the Dominion ceases to exist, not as an empire, but as a species. The choice is yours, Commander. Zerath looked around the bridge. Thex, Braxis, Kyvex, officers who had served faithfully for decades, now they watched him with a mixture of fear and supplication. They knew refusal would mean annihilation. Do I have the authority to accept terms on behalf of the Dominion? He asked Delacroix. You are the High Commander of the War Fleet. With Central Command destroyed, you are the highest remaining authority. A painful truth. The Imperial Palace Bautulus, the surface of Theron Prime, had been hit. During the battle, the Supreme Council was likely dead. Zerath took a deep breath. Then, on behalf of what remains of the Valoran Dominion, I accept unconditional surrender under the specified terms. The words echoed through the open communications, heard by millions on Theron Prime and billions across the galaxy. 10,000 years of empire ended not with a glorious explosion, but with a defeated whisper. Transmission accepted, Delacroix replied. Earth forces will assume control of Theron Prime in coordination with representatives of the liberated worlds. Commander Zerath, you and your senior officers will remain in custody until trials are organized. The connection was cut. Zerath remained motionless for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what he had just done. Then, he slowly removed his command insignia and placed them on the tactical console. Communications officer, he said calmly, transmit a final message on all frequencies. I want it to reach every corner of the galaxy. Yes, Commander. Zerath looked directly into the recording camera. He knew this would be the last time he spoke as a military leader. The last opportunity to shape a legacy. To the peoples of the galaxy, To the future explorers who find historical records of this war, I leave a final warning. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The Valoran Dominion was an ancient civilization, powerful, advanced beyond the comprehension of most. For 10,000 years, we conquered worlds through technological superiority. We believed we were invincible. We were wrong, and our mistake was not underestimating Earth's military capability. It was failing to understand human nature. Zerath gestured toward the viewport, showing the blue planet shining in space. Humans are a species that evolved on a hostile world. They survived ice ages, diseases, predators. They developed not through physical strength, but through pathological stubbornness, a fundamental refusal to accept extinction. When we attacked Earth, we did not find easy prey. We found a predator that was sleeping, and by waking it, we guaranteed our own destruction. He leaned closer to the camera. So I leave this warning. Humans are kind when treated with respect, capable of art, science, compassion. They can be excellent allies and trade partners. But if they are cornered, if their families are threatened, they transform into something terrifying. They do not fight for glory. They fight because they simply refuse to lose, and that distinction is everything. Zerath finalized the transmission. End message, distribute widely. While awaiting Earth forces to take control of the ship, Zerath reflected on the irony. Elder Archivist Moros had warned them. Records of 3 previous civilizations proved the danger, but the Dominion's arrogance had blinded them to the obvious truth. Earth was not a threat because it was technologically superior. It was a threat because it simply didn't know how to quit. Weeks later, during the first war crimes trials, Zerath found himself face to face with Admiral Ochoa again. She served as a witness, detailing the atrocities committed during the invasion. "Admiral," he said during a recess, "may I ask a question?" Ochoa considered, then nodded. "If positions were reversed, if Earth had the power and we were vulnerable, would you have shown the same mercy?" Ochoa was silent for a long moment. "Honestly, I don't know. Humanity is capable of great kindness and great cruelty. We are contradictory that way." She looked through a window at Theron Prime, being rebuilt below. "But I can tell you this. We fought not because we hated you, but because we loved our own. And now that the war is over, we choose to build instead of destroy, because that too is human nature." Zerath understood then Earth's true superiority. It wasn't technology or tactics, it was the capacity to be monsters when necessary, but to choose to be angels when possible. 2 years after the surrender, a new galactic order was established. The Galactic Council met at a neutral space station with representatives from 62 species. Earth purposefully refused a leadership position, insisting that all voices be equal. Marcus Delacroix, now Earth's first ambassador, opened the first formal session. "Peoples of the galaxy, we gather not as conquerors and conquered, but as equal partners. The war taught us a terrible but necessary lesson. No species should dominate others. Prosperity comes from cooperation, not coercion." He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with delegates from worlds that weeks before were enemies. "Earth will not forget what it suffered. Millions died, cities were destroyed. But we also will not allow pain to define our future. We choose to learn, to grow, and to build something better." The session unanimously approved the Galactic Freedom Charter, a document that guaranteed fundamental rights, prohibited imperial conquest, and established mechanisms for peaceful conflict resolution. It was not a perfect system. Tensions still existed. The scars of war would take generations to heal, but it was a start. And as Earth looked to the stars, now not as a victim or a conqueror, but as an equal partner among civilizations, humanity carried with it the lesson learned through blood and fire. Never underestimate a species that evolved to survive the impossible, because when cornered, humans don't surrender. They win, or they die trying. And usually it's impossible to tell the difference until it's too late. If humanity's tenacity against impossible odds inspired you, if the message that determination overcomes technology resonated, consider sharing this story. The galaxy is full of stories about unlikely heroes and victories won through sheer stubbornness. And humanity, in all its glorious contradictions, represents something fundamental: the refusal to accept defeat as inevitable. From the ruins of fallen civilizations to the stars yet to be reached, the message remains clear. Never wake the predator. Because once awakened, it does not go back to sleep until the threat is eliminated or until it ceases to exist itself. And you would bet against humanity at your own peril.